Hey, what's up, guys? Um, I had a conversation with my friend today, and a lot of what happens around me is my friends tend to vent. And he was going on about his kid and how, him and his kid aren't seeing eye to eye, how the kid's, confused, full of angst, and, just he doesn't understand what's going on. And, after about 2 hours of venting to me, he said, what do you think, man? Now, keep in mind, I don't have kids. I told him I don't think you want to know what I think. And he's like, no, come on, tell me. And so I told him, and I said, the problem is a lot of parents are trying to teach their kids qualities that they themselves don't have. So how does a selfish person teach a child about being selfless when they themselves don't know? And the thing is, ideally we want our kids to be the best versions of themselves, successful, play well with others. But effectively, we're preparing our kids for a world that does not exist. We instill in them all these traits that we wish we had because we know them to be noble. But over the course of our lives, we come up with rationalizations and justifications for the things that we do. So by the time we get to the point where it's time to rear a child, we understand what's good and we understand what's bad in a very general, rudimentary sense. And then we teach our kids to exemplify the qualities that we feel makes them a good person. But then they go out into a world where the blueprints they've been given don't match anything, And so suddenly you have a child who's trying to be charitable, trying to be selfless, and he's met with constant selfishness, or, you have kids that have hermits for parents, teaching them the value of exploration and, the merits of, not being afraid. So it basically, like I said, it just comes down to how do you teach a child something that you don't know? You take the traits from something or someone that exemplifies that. But even at that, in this day and age, it's a very shallow understanding. People see other people being charitable, and they say, "Oh, well, this is what you need to do," and you give them the mechanics of it, but that's it. You don't give them the understanding, and more importantly, we don't give them the reasoning for why it's important. And so kids go out into the world and they want to treat everybody like their friends. They want to, give everybody a chance. They want to trust everybody. And the fact is, nobody wants to sit down with their kid and say, look, the world is shitty. This is why you need to be better. And, you're going to be met with a lot of things that are meant to break your spirit. But here's why it's important to, rise above. And the reason we can't do that is because more and more as time progresses, it's harder to find a reason to be better than the world that you're, interacting with. Reality is reality, and there's something to be said for having ideals, but it's just as important for the kids to understand that if you're going to teach them that, most of the rest of the world doesn't subscribe to that and then to go a step further and explain to them why it's important. Well, if you don't know as a parent, how do you teach that to kids? So of course you have all these kids that are confused, like they see the world as their oyster, which is what most kids are taught. And then they get out into it and they see that it runs on a game of favoritism, racism, bigotry, you know? And then they're the one person in their group that's trying to be charitable, trying to see the best in people, when people are just, they're more inclined to show you the worst. So parents, actually most adults, you don't have to have kids to like take pause and like look inside yourself and first ask yourself why if you don't exemplify these qualities, why are you teaching them to your kid? And if you know they're important enough to teach to your kid, why are you not um, you know behaving that way? And then if you believe that that's a quality that you should pass on to your spawn, you need to figure out why that's important and what the implications are on a grand scale, on a scale of the child's life, and realistically, we kids go to high school, they learn all these things that a lot of them don't. Once they get into the job world, they don't end up using half of this shit. So rather than uh, home economics teaching kids how to like bake and shit, maybe we should be teaching them how to deal with the fact that if they choose to be forces for good, that they're going to be met with resistance, and then at that point we work together with our kids to try to rework the bones of social situations. We all work together with this. If you can't agree with your neighbor for any other reason but the benefit of your children, that's enough of a reason to come together and start changing how you interact with the world, change how you see the world, and spend more time thinking about solutions. Because anybody can point out a problem, anybody can point anything out, but it's very different to actively seek out actions, ideas that can help to make it so when these kids go out into the world, it's not such a harsh transition. Right now it's the equivalent of um, a fish hatching and then taught to be a bird. Then the fish goes out into the water. It's like, what the fuck is everybody talking about? Or a bird being taught to be a fish, when they're inherently a bird. And that's a very simple general analogy, but that's basically what it is. One of the things about maturity is being mature enough to recognize, and if it's reflected by your child, great. But once it's reflected, you need to be better so your child can see that other people are trying. Because if you teach your child to be selfless and you're just selfish as shit with no desire to be selfless, then they're looking like, why would you teach me to be selfless if you yourself are happy being selfish? There are things that, and like I said, I don't have a kid, but if I did have a kid, one of the things that would be big for me is I would want to, with myself, kind of figure out, how I would want my child to interact with the world and survive and do good. And then I would need to figure out how my example could either poison that or strengthen it. It's not enough to try to teach your kid to be a better person, because teaching them to be a better person when you don't have any idea of what you're talking about is just setting them up for failure. You know? But you can also teach your children that ideas can evolve, that people can be better. But if you're going to teach them that, then be better. Show them by example. It's just, if somebody comes to me and they tell me, you need to be more charitable, and I'm surrounded by people who are selfish pieces of shit, the person that's telling me to be charitable, all I see is somebody who's trying to form the situation to benefit from me. And at a certain point, children will analyze their views of the world, and not all the time will they come up with correct answers or ideas as to why you would teach them this. This is why I don't have children, because having children is an immense responsibility, not just to the child, but it's an immense responsibility as far as what you become obligated to do as a parent. I know plenty of people who, I have friends who just keep shitting out kids, and they like the idea of being a parent. They like telling everybody else how to raise their kids, but ultimately they don't know fucking shit. And it's easy to have sex, it's easy to have children, but the people that should be having children are the people that are willing to sit down, be honest with themselves, be honest with their kids, and at the very least go through things together, learn together. If you have an idea that, I want my kid to be charitable, and you're drawing from somebody else's example, that in itself is an admission that you know what the value of those traits are. So it's even more absurd when you know the benefit to being a good person and you actively choose the opposite. You make yourself uncredible. And the one thing that is true about me, if you want to give me advice, you sure as fuck better know what you're talking about. Because I'm not taking advice from somebody who, if my car breaks down, I'm not going to contact a baker to tell me what the problem is. I'm going to contact somebody who knows what the fuck they're talking about. And, maybe you feel like some of these things are too big an idea to wrap your head around, but that's exactly the kind of cop-out that is leading to these kids being confused, being scared, being angry. Right now there are more kids than any other time in history that are transgender, these are children that are trying to find their place in the world, and they're all confused about their place. They feel wrong in their environment because we're teaching them to be the ideal version of us. But we're jaded by reality. We know what's real, what's not. And so it should be criminal to teach your kids to, turn the other cheek in a society where turning the other cheek just means lining up for another punch. And so, you could take what I'm saying, disregard it, whatever. And it's really easy to disregard what I'm saying. Oh, well, he doesn't have a kid, You don't need children to see a problem that is, it's working at the foundation of a family. It's a lot easier to just say, no, he's wrong, than it is to say, could he be right? And ultimately, I don't give a fuck. I don't have kids. I'm man enough to admit I'm too selfish to have kids. I'm not done living for me. And some of you will say, oh, well, that's disgusting, that's selfish. Yeah, you're goddamn right, it's selfish. But it's selfish to the point of responsibility when I'm not choosing to be selfish and then bringing something into the world that needs me. And a lot of people are having kids, oh, I don't believe in birth control, I don't believe in this. That's fine. But I don't believe in two morons getting together, smashing together like Barbie and Ken, shitting out a kid that's going to turn into a carjacker or one of those people that fucking talks to themselves at the bus stop. If you're going to have kids, you should be able to work with them, bond with them, understand them on a level that goes beyond, oh, my kid likes soccer. So many children are having children. And having said that, like, for those teens out there who are feeling angry towards their parents, you haven't reached the point yet where you've made the realization. But keep in mind, your parents were just kids when they had you. Nobody has the secret code to living perfectly, living free of hardship. But a lot of people are doing the best they can. And just remember, when you're angry at your parents, at the end of the day, most of the time, the stuff that you're angry at your parents about is at its core your parents trying to protect you from a world that is at times very, very dark. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't have a lot of people in my life that care. So if you have people in your life that care enough, imagine your parents love you to death. And when you hate them, it kills them. But they're taking that heartbreak of you hating them in the name of keeping you protected. Your parents are making sacrifices that you have no idea about because you're just a kid. And nobody expects you to know those things. But if you're old enough to watch this video, if you're old enough to use YouTube, then you are old enough to acknowledge that your parents are trying as hard as they can. And keep in mind, they know more than you. So maybe give them a break, But if your parents are abusive pieces of shit, obviously, fuck them, And parents, like, if you are, once again, like I said, if you are teaching your kids qualities that you yourself think should be exemplified and you don't exemplify them, then you're a fucking idiot. You have no business having kids. Change your fucking attitude, change your mindset, change your fucking approach to dealing with your reality, or shut the fuck up. Don't give anybody advice, and certainly don't try to fucking tell your kids what to do, because as it is, you aren't doing a good job either. Now, yes, nobody has figured it out. Nobody's living perfectly. But all of us who are of adult age that can watch YouTube and press buttons, we are all capable of taking the time to examine ourselves, be honest with ourselves. And that may be the hardest part, being honest with yourself. But it's necessary. Once you have a kid, it's not about you anymore. It's about the kid. I don't care who the fuck you are. You may be a selfish person and you think, oh, well, I'm going to be a selfish person. No. If you have a kid, fuck you. That shit's over. I'm a selfish person, and I know enough to not have a child, because I know that if I have a child, even with me being a selfish person, I have enough presence of mind to know that if I have a child, I will make my life about that child, because that's what you're supposed to do. And I don't care if your kid's younger than me. If your kid tries to carjack me, I will get out of the car and I'll beat your kid to death. All right? So maybe that's reason enough to fucking pull your head out of your ass. Because, if you're not going to take an active role in raising your child, shit, give me fucking 30 seconds when they're trying to rob me, and I'll teach them fucking a lesson that they will sure as fuck take to their grave. The world out there is tough. It's at times evil, The world will teach your child if you want. And that should be a scary thought, because look at what we have. Do you really want this reality having a hand in teaching your child? No. So yeah, that's all. Um, I can see not a lot of people watch these videos, and that's fine because who wants to be told that they're doing something wrong, or who wants to be given advice by somebody they don't know. But here's the thing about that, like purely statistically, somebody who's living a different life than you is going to be able to teach you something that you don't already know. And when you start walking around like, oh, what the fuck does this person know? This person probably knows a lot that you don't know. And looking at the world that way makes you a fucking idiot. So you're watching this video and you're like, what the fuck does this guy know? Fuck him. That means nothing to me because you're a fucking idiot. Like, that's as simple as it is. Nobody should have a problem with admitting that they're wrong. And if you're if you're afraid to admit that you're wrong, ask yourself why. Because 9 times out of 10 it's because you don't want to look stupid to people. Anybody who thinks that you look stupid by admitting a mistake to correct it, who gives a fuck what their opinion is? I don't let fucking morons dictate my life. If someone's like, oh, you're an idiot, ha ha ha, I'm like, okay, well, fucking, I just heard your girlfriend say that you wipe fucking back to front. So, maybe we should all, just worry about being better people. There's no reason to care what other people think, because the people that really matter aren't judging you for evolving your thinking. When I see somebody admit that they're wrong and seek to correct that information, I see somebody who's trying, and I see somebody who is putting themselves at risk of being made fun of for the sake of evolving their thinking. And that is a person that I have hope in. I have hope for. You can be conscious of the social contract, but also, like, if your neighbor thinks you're a bad parent, who gives a shit? Unless you actually are a bad parent. If you're beating your kids, you're a fucking idiot. You know who beats their children? Morons. Because they don't know how to deal with kids. You used to be a kid, you fucking idiot. If you're actually hitting your kid, it just shows that you are stupider and stupider as time goes on. Don't take it out on your kid. You know what I mean? Like, what a piece of shit to fucking abuse kids, But also, having said that, when I was being raised, if we talked back to my mom or we insulted the meal she made us, my dad would backhand us. And people would be like, oh, that's terrible. No, it taught me respect, which is a lot of there's not a lot of people that have respect these day and age. My ex-wife was never spanked in her life. The most entitled, spoiled, shallow, selfish person I've ever met. I devoted my life to trying to make her happy, and she just kept going, give me more, give me more, give me more. She's completely unwilling to acknowledge the things that I was doing. She just wanted more. If you spend your life concentrating on what you don't have, you're always going to be unhappy, because nobody can own everything, So, don't beat your kids, but, don't be afraid to, smack them in the mouth if they're talking back, You don't want your kid, like, plotting on you, you know what I mean? Like, if I had a kid and I found out my kid was, like, planning to overtake me as head of the household, I'd fuck that kid up. I know more. I'm faster. I'm dirtier. I've learned more from life. So, take it for what it is. Once again, you can disagree with me. I don't really give a shit. But if you have a legitimate argument for anything I've said, I'm always down to hear a legitimate argument. Not someone being like, you don't know what you're talking about. Great. I don't know what I'm talking about. If you have time to tell me that on YouTube and you have kids, you don't know what you're talking about either. Because I guarantee your fucking kid could use some more fucking intelligent parent and less moron that's fucking typing away on YouTube. Alright. That's pretty much everything. Hugs, kisses.